Residential lettings in 2025 kept us all on our toes. It was a year, though, of mixed signals, new legislation in the Renters' Right Act, and one constant we can all agree on: a lack of new landlords coming to the market, which means a lack of new stock. Let's take a closer look at the year.
Quarter one started more quietly than we've seen in previous years. Instructions were down by 28%, and tenant registrations fell by 24%, largely driven by limited availability rather than a lack of demand. But relets were slightly up at 5%, showing that tenants were happy to stay put. Of those moving in, around 75% of them were professional tenants and 26% were students. Quarter two saw further pressure on supply. Valuations were down by 45% and instructions by 40% compared to the same quarter last year, with people renewing also falling by 23%. Despite this, deals agreed were up by 14%. Again, this highlights that well-priced, well-located rental property continues to attract strong interest. Student rentals increased to 47% this quarter and professionals at 53%. International demand remained a key driver, with around 36% from Asia, 20% from Europe, and 32% from the USA, a trend we are seeing more and more. Quarter three was simmering with talk of new legislation. Lots of headlines, plenty of rumours, but very little clarity. Landlords continue to become a rarer breed. Valuations fell by 14% and new instructions by 23% compared to the same period last year. Yet activity remained strong. New deals agreed were up by 26% this quarter, agreed lets by 21%, and tenant renewals were up by 9%. Being so close to some of the UK's leading universities, we also saw a surge in high net worth families securing central accommodation for their children. A remarkable 86% of all the deals this quarter were to student rentals, and 30% were from Asia, 44% from Europe, and 13% from the USA. Quarter four finally saw some clarity, with the Renters' Right Bill being passed, but most measures will not come into force until May 2026 at the earliest. For more details on this, we have a full breakdown at hudsonsproperty.com/blog. Valuation and instructions continue to fall, down by 31% and 36% compared to the same period last year. However, new lettings were up by an impressive 45% and renewals rose by 20%. Viewings per agreed lettings dropped by 50%, suggesting a more balanced market and reconfirming a shortage of available stock. This quarter saw a more even split between students at 45% and professionals at 55%. The highest tenant groups came from Europe at 32%, and Asia and USA sharing 23%, and the UK at 13%. Looking at the year as a whole, inquiries were up slightly by 9%, and rents rose by a modest 3%. But the clear trend is fewer landlords entering the market due to ongoing uncertainty. And if supply remains constrained, upward pressure on rents is likely to continue in the years ahead.
So that's 2025 in a nutshell for residential lettings in London's West End. There's plenty to look forward to next year in 2026, so do visit hudsonsproperty.com/blog for my interpretation. Thanks for listening and Happy New Year.